Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have Michael Reed, who will be talking a little bit about the future and how we have some things that we worry about what as men. Whatever. We'll edit that. I'll create a new cap.
Keep it in. It's your first episode.
There we go. So, Mr. Michael, please go ahead and introduce yourself here.
Mr. Phil, thank you for having me on today. Yeah. We met like a year ago. I myself am a massage therapist turned hopefully soon men's coach, trying to help do my part to tackle the current masculinity crisis we have going on in the world from my own angle of trying to get a healthy integration of science and spirituality, like getting guys to understand what is the actual data, the metrics, what's going on neurologically, what's going on physically, what is the science behind why it's okay to grieve, why it's okay to cry, why I'm stuck in my life, rather than taking it from a perspective of if you just keep telling yourself affirmations every day, you'll eventually succeed. Like, well, there's something else stuck in the back of your head that needs to get uncorked. And once you uncork that, you probably find a lot more success in life. And there's a whole litany of research as to why we get neurologically stuck in certain patterns and habits and ways, and hoping I can help guys to get more progress in life by getting them connected to those problems, understanding it better, and then moving them on the right path.
I think that actually opens up some great places to get started into. So, today in modern society, a lot of worry of what's the future going to hold. What, especially in today's culture, it's the futures. There's a lot of uncertainties, a lot of directions that it could go down. And to not have that control or that feeling of I get to lead my future is very troublesome, especially for men, because we want to have direction. We want to be able to lead. We have qualities that, we really want to push into and try to form the future and control it in ways. But we forget of where we're at right now. And we forget who we are in this moment itself. We keep trying to push a future self-image. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more of what you've seen and your thoughts on that.
On future self-image and staying in the moment and staying present. Yeah, I think whether people like to admit it or not, men are very much so socially, culturally, biologically selected for their ability to stabilize the future, their ability to plan things out, be productive, be generative. It's a big one when it comes to like healthy masculinity, is like you're producing more than you're consuming. And in that regard, especially when you're younger, you're going to be like, I remember watching a podcast recently, was talking about, it was a guy who mentioned how like he has two boys, and he basically said to his young boys in a healthy, productive, fatherly way, it's like you consume way more than you produce, but eventually one day that's going to shift, because like you're still growing up. They're teenagers, basically. They're still learning, they're still growing, they're still developing. They give love, but they consume a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And the ultimate goal is that one day you will turn them into like, not necessarily machines, but like healthy, productive men that can give back more than they had to take over time, and then create a generative surplus in the world of that kind of stuff. I think we're kind of wired in that way to think about, well, what about my future? What about my career? What about my job? What about my business? What about my family? What about this? What about And it's very easy to sit in the future for too long, which in essence, sitting in the future and then worrying about it for a whole lot of time is what anxiety is in a nutshell. And especially nowadays, it's very easy to just completely miss what's right in front of your face or what's happening right next to you. And you're missing a lot of information from the environment, from your body, from your people in your life, from your partner. If you're with somebody, you're missing a crap ton of information if you're so hyper-focused on the future or even on the past. If you're sitting heavy in regret that you can't let go of, you're refusing to grieve something that needs to grieve it out, you're missing out on a crap ton of information, what's happening right now. That can ideally give you better perspective on where to go next, what's actually important, what's not that important, how much of it is external stimulus telling you something that's important, it's not actually that important, what's really going to make you happy today and tomorrow, being present with your family and friends. Yeah, stuff.
Yeah. What do you think, like, the reason why we want to produce, we want to be something more or continue to push into that area? Is it a way of detracting from sense of self and some of the things that might be inside of you? Like some of the things that are scary to look at inside, some of the wounds, some of the things that are there that we haven't dealt with and we want to avoid the current right now as well.
Yeah, that's a function of distractions, I guess is a good way to put it. Is that we're like back in the day, way back in the day, like life and society and technology, everything moved at a way slower pace than it does today. Way disgustingly slower. Like if I sent a piece of mail to somebody who lived in China, it's not going to get there for like 6 months. Now I can text that person, it's there in their pocket in less than 3 seconds. And back in those times when good and bad things happened, you had time to just sit down and just digest it. When something good happened, if something bad happened, you had time to just like sit with the feeling. So in a way, I think we ended up evolving as a species to have a particular speed at which we could grieve things, learn to digest new information, plan for the future. And in today's day and age, there's a combination of no time to sit with your thoughts because there's either too many things going on at once, or you're being told you should be doing more than you're actually doing and you're not a good person because of it. And also, especially in the West, we have like an allergy to grief. We're literally allergic to it. But we're terrified of just sitting down with our feelings and our thoughts, and because it's so easy to just numb out and distract and find other things to do rather than sit there. Because sometimes it takes a while. I just this past week, I'm probably gonna do it again this week. I had a good idea for a meditation practice I'm trying out. It's just literally stare at a wall, like literally just go up to a blank wall and just sit down and just stare at it. Because what ends up happening is your brain is going at such a high speed and fast pace that you need to like time to like almost like slowing down in a car, like tapping on the brake gently to slow the car down. You're not going to come to like an instant halt. You're going to get massive whiplash if you do that. You're going to slow down gradually. And as you start to slow down, like staring at a wall like that for an hour, you'll just random thoughts of things you didn't realize were still in the back of your head or start to come to the surface, and things start coming out, and old feelings you didn't digest, and people you haven't talked to, and people you got to contact, and things. I literally just had like a notepad next to me. I was just jotting things down as they were coming to me. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't taken away everything else as far as external stimulation goes. And I think nowadays it's so easy to just find that numbing place rather than go through that temporary discomfort of, like in my case, staring at a wall or going for a walk. It's like you're forcing yourself to slow down. And sometimes when you slow down like that, your body almost kicks back. Like, no, I'm used to going at speed. I want to keep going. Why are you slowing down? And eventually you slow down enough and you finally have time to actually sit with the things and notice the things you've been pushing down and forgetting about. And it's a real problem today because men are burning out and blowing up left and right because there's such a massive backlog of things that haven't been digested, haven't been processed properly, haven't been grieved. And I like to think of the human mind and body as almost like the mind in particular is like your subconscious is like a multi-terabyte hard drive, and your conscious mind has like 120 gigabytes of RAM. Like it's tiny compared to how much is back here, how much you can process at once. You can only really process so much at a particular pace. So yeah, you hear the stories all the time of guys who are just like going, and then they just crash and burn or they blow everything up. Why? Because this is a massive crap load of things that you didn't process. Why didn't you process it? Because the world's telling you to go too fast. And you need to just slow the F down. Sit down, stare at a wall for an hour and just see what happens and what comes up.
Yeah. And I think that was also some of the wake-up call that we got especially when COVID hit. There was a big wake-up call, not just because of the things. COVID was a terrible virus that went through, but it's, literally grinded the world to a halt. Just as you were talking about, it's like it didn't pump the brakes slowly and just come to a gradual stop. It was a complete and utter halt. And it really did have a significant change. And it brought up a lot of things that people were not ready to handle. And yes, it's the things that they need to work on. But when you have that sudden hit in the brakes coming to a screeching halt, all the items from the back seat went into the front and through the windshield. And now we were seeing a lot of people just coming into realization that from that time over 5 years ago to now finally getting to a point of where, okay, maybe I can start working with it. Maybe now I can start to look into it. And that's where we're seeing a big rise in the last, I'm going to say, year or two out there for, words like trauma, shadow, and other types of things of what was hidden.
Yeah, and I think it's also revealing a lot of, I have a personal theory around this, that we're trying to over optimize our collective productivity at the expense of just other buckets that you can only fill at a certain pace under certain circumstances. So like it was just this is a good topic I was learning about just recently. It was this idea that a lot of therapy culture has come around to replace traditional religion, and a lot of people are now learning to identify with like, oh, it's my trauma, oh, it's my anxious attachment, oh, it's my avoidant attachment, oh, it's my childhood wounds. And it's like, well, historically, how would you have worked through that?
Mm.
Like, what would you would have slowed the fuck down. You would have gone to maybe church or synagogue or mosque. You would have talked to an elder of some sort. Or you were with people and friends and family around you, and you would have like sat down and just talked it out and processed and digested and started to make healthier connections, and then letting go of the old things to make room for new ideas and new realities that are coming into play. And yeah, with COVID, I think it just kind of like it's put a slam on the brakes, and then also it revealed a lot of like a lot of crap under the carpet we've been sweeping under there for way too long.
Yeah.
That it was gonna eventually blow up somewhere somehow, regardless. And I think what we're seeing is just a ton of people who realize like there are exceptions to the rule in terms of like, you know, super productivity and whatnot, you know, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, those types of people who are just like a workaholics. But most people need a healthy balance of like go to work, come home, like you have a purpose in life, you have a job, you have a family you care about, you have kids that are your future, you're working towards your legacy, you have thing, and then when like when you come to a grinding halt on like the purpose and the job thing, and all of a sudden you're just like you don't have a purpose, you don't have a job because COVID told you to stay home in your house all day. And then all of a sudden you realize there's a crap ton of stuff in your relationship you haven't talked about for the past 5 years. And all of a sudden you have a ton of time next to each other, stuck in the house all day. You had to sit down and talk through. You've been avoiding. Like these are things you would have taken time away from, like too much time at the work at the job, and then been like, okay, well, I could work a few more hours of work, or I could spend a few more hours with my kids, or I could spend an extra hour with my wife and my husband and sit down and talk to them about the things that we've been sweeping under the rug. And we over-index on productivity and like work, and we under-index on other things. And now like the bills come due.
Yeah.
People are just exploding left and right.
Well, it's the whole community and society came to a grinding halt, and everybody, you know, had that slam on the brakes, and everybody felt that shockwave. And then everybody was trying to add labels to it to say, oh no, I'm an avoidant, I'm an anxious attachment because I had these things in my past, or I had all this trauma. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's real, but the identity part of it to say I am, no, it's just, it's more of thinking on like, I am anxious about making contact with somebody or with and wanting, or I'm avoidant of contact. It's not, I am anxious, I am avoidant. We got to be, you know, as a society, we got to be careful, but also as a society and community, we need to help each other heal. And I think some people are trying to fill in that gap, trying to come in very quickly into it, but we're not doing it fully collective yet.
Yeah, well, there was a couple things in there. One was I think I learned from, was it Dewey Freeman talking about, like, I'm not avoidant attached, I'm just avoidant about contact. I'm not anxious,
Right.
anxious about contact. We literally learned this the other day in the How to Work with Men program. It's a good way to frame it. But there is a massive problem in a couple things. One, multi-generational wisdom is going right out the window dramatically, and it's all being uploaded to Google Cloud drives. And two is that we are not teaching people how to be with themselves. We're not teaching, like when you say, okay, I'm anxious, okay, what do you have to do? I have to sit with the feeling of calming myself down to not be overly anxious about contact with somebody. If I'm avoidant, I have to go make contact with somebody and sit with the feeling of being avoidant. There's no amount of books, no amount of therapy or coaching is ever going to change the fact that ultimately you have to go into that opportunity, that arena of some sort, and just sit there with your body kicking and flailing and screaming that like this is not what you want until it calms down. And we don't teach younger kids and younger generations anymore of like what it feels like to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think what we're trying to do, and it's a really bad idea, is we're trying to make the world a safer place by removing all the threats rather than making people more resilient to deal with the threats that are always going to be there, or the challenges or the difficulties in life, whatever word you want to use. Especially with like young men, if we're talking the men's coaching, it's like we simultaneously dramatically reduce the amount of opportunities that have to be with older men to teach them how to, how do we deal with conflict? How do we deal with each other? How do we process, grief and frustration and business negotiation and holding frame in a masculine frame in a healthy way? How do we deal with our buddies who are having a hard time and we're there for them? We took that away so they don't have that kind of experience by way of observation, seeing and being there when it happens. And then we, at the same time, filled in pornography, video games, weed, alcohol, like instant dopamine hits 24 hours a day from you don't have to leave your own bed. You could just like get everything. You can DoorDash from your bed. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can talk to people on Discord or Skype, whatever in your bed. You can jerk off to porn. You might get your sexual side of it. Like everything's in your pocket right now.
Right.
And it still is just missing this component of like, well, then like it's still missing something. There's like this spice that's missing. And it's called socializing with real human beings in person. Like I might have mentioned how I moved down from New York to Georgia recently. And like yesterday, I remember just in the span of the day, most of my buddies, they work HVAC. They were out for the day. I was home. I was bored as crap. I was kind of getting a little bit depressed. I was having a hard time getting work done. As soon as I came home, like, hey, let's go hang out. I walked over there and I was in the best mood ever. I felt so good. They were like, are you feeling all right? I'm like, I'm recharging right now because I've been missing this all day. Holy crap. And it's just not something that you can substitute. You can't put face to someday, maybe we can, but currently your body knows the difference between whether or not there's a human being actually there in front of you. Like me and you talking right now through a platform would be way different if I was sitting in the room with you. Right. You were sitting in the room with me here. Body will respond dramatically differently. And if you don't give people the opportunity to practice what it's like to deal with those interactions in person, like this is a fun thing that just popped in my head is like the idea of ghosting is such a foreign thing for like old school dating because you couldn't just like ghost somebody that lived in your village or your tribe. Like you can't be like, I'm just not going to talk to you ever again. Like, yeah, I'm going to see you tomorrow at like the bonfire. Like you can't just hide from me. Like now it's like I could just there's so many places we could you could try, but I'll find you. Or you'll find me if I try to ghost you. It's like we're gonna be in proximity at some point. We're gonna have to reconcile what happened in person as human beings. And I think this is where you start to get this combination of like avoidance and anxiousness, where it's like you don't get enough variety of enough different people to figure out who you are, what your boundaries look like, what kind of interactions you want to have. And it just starts to compound while simultaneously offloading to social media, to pornography, to ways to cope with the discomfort. When the only way through the only way out is through. The only way through the discomfort of getting through anxiousness is to deal with your anxiousness. The only way to deal with the avoidance is to actually deal with the avoidance. And plenty of people would rather just say, like, I'll get a pass because I have this label called I'm an anxious, I'm an avoidant, I'm a disorganized. Oh, it's my childhood trauma. It's not me refusing to sit in the discomfort of having to learn how to talk to somebody. It's my childhood trauma. Like, yeah, maybe it is, and you still have to fucking do it. Yeah. Like, there's no way around that.
Well, I think that's something also worthwhile discussing is victim and the difference. And, once again, to quote Dewey Freeman, difference between victim and prey animals. Like prey animals are very strong, fast, sensitive, and, avoid danger and are attuned. While victims basically just sit into it, said, oh, this happened to me. Well, now this is just who I am.
This is my identity.
This is I'm dinner tonight. It's giving up. And the more that we see this to say, well, I'm just anxious. Well, okay, that's fine. But what are you going to do about it? Like, are you going to sit with it and try to prove it? Or are you going to let this become a part of you and be your identity because you're saying that I am this, or instead of saying, because of the things that have happened to me in my past, it made me anxious to be with somebody or to be in love. And I don't want to be anxious, but I know I have these things I need to work on so that I'm not. And I think that's a big component that we're seeing right now is this labeling out there.
It's removing autonomy.
Yeah. And trying to put a label and to say, no, it's just that label.
To growth and maturity, that I think we have a generation of people who just are desperately trying to stay as children, not even through much of their fault of their own. Like a lot of this there's a whole Freudian mother complex and devouring mother, and fathers who got kicked out of the space, and even the men are kind of backing off from their own healthy masculinity. And there is something of Like you can't really like a brand new baby up until like 8 months to a year old is a perpetual victim. Like everything that happens to it is not its fault and it's the worst thing that ever happened. And holy crap, everyone needs to take it. Yeah, that's exactly what babies are. But over time, what you eventually start teaching them is like, okay, there are things you can do for yourself. And this is an extreme. This is not to like knock people who have been through some traumatic shit. Like if you've been sexually assaulted or in combat, like a PTSD in combat or something crazy. Yeah, there's some fucked up things that happen. But
Yeah.
even those people, at some point, through enough time and effort, will get to a point where they say like, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to be, based on what like how I choose to carry myself moving forward. And that victim mentality it becomes a cop out, and it becomes essentially like an extension of childhood in my opinion. Like babies are prey, babies are victims.
Yeah.
Eventually they should. This is something interesting to talk about, like the biology. We look at predatory animals. A lot of their eyelids, their pupils go vertical, and a lot of that is due to the fact that a couple of reasons. One, they're like if you're like a lion in the savannah, a lot of trees, a lot of grass, it's all going vertically. So being able to pick out something from all that visualization by looking across helps a lot. And when you find it, you want to hone in on that one thing. Like it comes almost like honing in on that one thing. A lot of prey animals, and also their eyes are usually forward facing, so both eyes are getting information at the same time from one particular narrow thing. For a lot of prey animals, if you look at like horses, you look at cows, their eyes are on the side of their head and the field of vision is flat because they're getting as much information as possible to keep track of things. Human beings are like half and half. We have circular eyes, circular pupils. So we can be predators, but we can also be prey because it encompasses all directions.
Right.
And yeah, there's a point in your life when it's like, yeah, you are kind of something like a victim. Terrible things happen to you, but it shouldn't become your identity because as long as you recognize you have autonomy over more of your life than you think you do, there was like control what you can, accept what you cannot. People put too much into the, not being accepting what they can't control. And they put that as like the perpetual, it's not my fault. This is my fault, whatever it may be. And whatever it is, unfortunately. It's just a matter of just working with the cards you were dealt and making the most of it. And that's where your ultimate happiness is going to come from.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mention the horses because I was with them last week as part of a initiation I went through. And yeah, it's, here's this 1,200-pound animal who has, the eyes on the side, who can see very well angles. I think each eye was like 140-degree angles.
Jesus.
Like on each side. Now, of course, that means right in the front, they have maybe within a few feet of them, they can't quite see you.
Yeah.
And then also right in the back of it, which is, they have to turn their head. And a lot of times horses will stand either side by side or kind of like, head here, facing different directions. You kind of just watch out for each other. And these are strong prey animals, but they are prey-based animals. They are very sensitive to anything that's interrupting their homeostasis or coming in. So like when walking into the stable, this group of men I was with, all of a sudden these horses are like, oh, what's this? What's happening? Why are you walking in here? Who are you? Should we be worried or not? So they're also picking up, your posture, who you are, and understanding you. And that's a big component of, I'd say, a prey and then victim. It's all about self instead of trying to understand where they are, what they need to do, what actions. It's just, I need to blame, and not to, demoralize or demonize victim. Because I absolutely agree with you. There are definitely cases where we are a victim. But over time, if you keep choosing to be that and you're not trying to stop being that, or if you're trying to become one by adding labels or saying, oh, this happened to me, so, that just means this is how it is now. That's, in a way, playing that victimhood. But you can go to more of that understanding like, no, I don't need to stay there. And I can choose, to be both prey and predator like humans are. And I think that was a perfect explanation like you had. It's, especially for men, we need to understand how we interact in this world and how we choose to be, sensitive and in tuned, but also hunting for what we need and want. But at the same time, like the prey animal, being present and understanding where we are in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because predators are thinking, especially when they're hunting, what do I need to do? What tactics? How can I get to the meal that I need to get to and catch this animal? That's I think, is a beautiful balance inside of humans, is that ability to be both.
Be able to empathize with both. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
And right now, society is more victim and predator and understanding, being here and observant where we are, being sensitive and in tuned, slowing things down. And instead of trying to just hunt for the next meal or pursue the next thing every time and try to have, produce more, slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Take in the things around you. You can be strong and big, just like that 1,200-pound horse that could have easily killed me if it decided to do anything. But all it was doing was just taking in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I went up to one and I petted it, put my arm around it, and it just melted as soon as it felt like, okay, this is fine.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm safe. And I think that's a big component of understanding from our past anything that has happened to us. And when we had that slam on the brakes moment, say, what do I need to do to feel I'm okay?
This is what's interesting when you see with a lot of people who really digest their traumatic experiences or their past or the problems they have. And you start to see people not realize how multi-layered their emotions are. And this is the frustrating part of why I think you can get to a point where you can recognize multiple emotions at one time, but it takes practice. It takes like meditation and breath work and consistency and self-awareness you have to build up. And there's a whole scientific literature behind like building self-awareness and how it takes to like strengthen your prefrontal cortex and all that fun stuff. But people don't realize like the first thing you see in your mind emotionally is not always the actual root of the problem. And being able, and oftentimes if you're in this constant, we'll say like predator state, which is going to sound terrible. It's like, why don't you like embrace your predator? Like, not acting kind of predator. No. Just but like, think about like the wolf, the lion, not the child molester. Nothing.
No.
No, not that predator. Not that predator.
No.
That you have to figure out like why. It's like even when a lion, it's like imagine a lion that like just got a kill and it didn't stop and eat it. It just went to the next kill. It didn't even stop to enjoy it and try to get, or it ate food and it's like I gotta go with it. It's like it's constantly looking for food. Like no, they spend their time, they work on the thing, they tackle the thing, they find their prey, they kill it, and they eat it, and they sit there and they're like, all right, now I gotta digest for a while and just chill out. And imagine being that lion and saying like, every single day I have to find something new or else I'm going to die. And it's not like lions need to go in like a more of a prey perception, but it's more like, what are you convinced is going to happen if you stop working? What are you convinced is going to happen if you like slowed down? If you took a minute to just take a breath and check in where you are, what's going to happen? What are you protecting yourself from? And this is very commonly what we see with guys who will talk to and work with the coaching, with the therapy stuff. It's like, I just feel like, I have to do this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like you're feeling like you're nervous because you're afraid something's going to happen. What are you trying to protect yourself from? And then all of a sudden they just end up bawling their eyes out. They're like, I don't even know, but holy shit, I've been going so fast. I'm convinced I'm going to be broken. It's not going to be enough. Not going to be enough for who? For my dad. Oh, why is that? Because he was never, and there's the problem.
Right.
It wasn't like, I need to keep working. It was like, oh, I don't get an approval from my dad 20 years ago. And like, that's what your brain was holding on. And the same thing with the problem with the 64 megabytes of RAM that your conscious mind has. You have to be able to like go through file by file by file in your head. It's not in this file. It's not in this file. It's not in the file. Oh, it's in this file. This is what I was looking for. This is where it is.
Yeah.
You can't open up all the files at once of your brain. You'll just have a shutdown. You'll have a meltdown. You'll explode. It's too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like recognizing like, what are you trying to run from your past, from your behavior in the future, running towards, what are you afraid of happening, and being honest about it. And then recognizing like, is this something really still worth running from anymore? Can you let it go? Can you grieve it? Can you process it? Can you digest it and be okay with what happened? There's plenty of people that have been through traumatic shit that can still say like, yeah, I was, XYZ, PTSD in the military, sexually molested, my arms got blown, whatever it is. And they go like, yeah, that happened, but I'm still moving forward with life. And you're like, how the fuck can you do that? Like, because they digested it. They sat with it. They processed it at their own 64 megabyte pace, whatever it was. They didn't like run. They weren't constantly in this predatory, defensive, protective state. They actually went into like a calmer state and let some space, and they kind of cleaned out their hard drive. That's the way I like to say it to people. Like grieving is like a form of like cleaning out, like defragging your hard drive.
And that's definitely a point right there. But I did want to make a point when you were talking about the lion that just constantly goes and kills but doesn't eat. Well, first off, it's going to starve.
Yep.
And also, it's most likely alone. It's not part of a pack. And it's not relying on others for help. It's not relying on, any kind of support. It's just running, constantly running. And those guys would, they would die when you're alone out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was just something else I just want to add as a point with that. It's
we're hypersocial creatures.
Yeah. And we need to rely on a good pack together to work on things, to be able to share that grief with. To sit there alone is not the only, it's a start to understand some of the things like doing the breath work yourself, journaling. It's a great start. But the next evolution is finding a tribe or a community to be able to share that with. Because in Connor's words, it needs to be witnessed.
Oh, yeah. Shame needs a witness.
That's Connor Beaton, but yeah.
That's I don't know who it was, but that's an old quote in psychology. But Connor, he definitely was the one that we both heard
from where I heard it from.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other component of understanding that grief is that it's a process.
Yeah, and I'll throw a little bit of my own armchair neurobiology in here.
We love it.
Yeah. It makes it easier for me to really like when I can talk to a guy and he'd be like, I don't understand why crying is so important. Like, you wouldn't have evolved if it didn't have a purpose. So if you want to pull out like the evolutionary path, like there's a reason you can. And with the shame needs a witness thing, there's a whole bundle of neurons in your brain we refer to as mirror neurons. Mm-hmm. And basically they're the neurons that like when you like see somebody else doing something and you can replicate it. That's physical. You can replicate the movements. You can copy somebody's movements, but there's also emotional component to that too. That you can tell how somebody's feeling because you can feel what they're feeling based on your mirror neurons, essentially like communicating information between each other. And in the case of something like learning to get yourself to grieve, it's very common that people will have men in particular will have our stories. We'll go into like storytelling mode. And it's our own protective way of like, if I could just keep telling myself the story, then it keeps down like that feeling that I'm trying to like protect. But the story only really works as well as people are able to continue engaging with it the way that I'm expecting them to. So it's like, if I have a guy I'm working with who's just like, yeah, but like this crazy shit happened. And they're expecting you to be like, oh my God, crazy shit. Oh, but they're like, this crazy shit happened. And you're like, okay. And then they're like, but what? No, it's not. You're supposed to freak out. Everyone else I've told to freaks out. And you're the first person like forcing me to like examine, should I be looking at the story with the same energy that I've been doing so far? And you can kind of almost use your own, as a therapist, as a coach, your own mirror neurons in a way to essentially say, like, I am forcing you to slow down by reflecting back. Well, I'm going to hold a grounded state and getting you to reinterpret the energy you're putting into the story again and see if it's really worth like being what it's being. And very commonly, like when you suck the energy out of that story, their guard goes down with it. And when the guard goes down, that's when all the grief finally comes out. All the frustration, all the things have been bottling up. And so it's a clever, that's why it's like shame needs a witness, grief needs a witness. Like you need somebody else to show you how you should be feeling about what happened, to give yourself permission to feel a different way than what you're feeling. Because your mind will just continually keep you on that loop indefinitely. Otherwise you can never get out of it. So you need other people to essentially reflect back. Oh, I shouldn't be like, I remember hearing a story about a guy, I think it was in a men's group somewhere. And it was Dr. Robert Glover. It was No More Mr. Nice Guy. And he was talking about how he had a men's weekend or a group he did with some guys. And there was a guy in the group who was in like his mid 40s or something like that. And he's like, yeah, my best friend died in like a fire when I was 9 years old. And everyone was like, whoa. And he was like, oh, wow, I never thought of how fucked up that was. And then he started crying about it. And he's like, he held it in for like 30 years of like, yeah, just shit happens. And you're like, no, that's still fucked up. Yeah. And he got permission from other guys to be like, oh, that is fucked up. oh wow, I never actually like let myself feel how fucked up that was, and just let it out and felt better. But that's where that isolate the myth of the lone wolf. A lot of guys convince women too, but men in particular convince like I should be able to do this by myself. Like no, biologically you are not designed to do this solo. You are not designed to do that. That is like a spit in the face of millions of years of evolution trying to like optimize our species in a certain way. We need other people to help us like process shame, process grief. Even shame is a big one where it's like it's shame is not self-induced, it's externally triggered. It's not an emotion you can really trigger in yourself. You need somebody else to like give it to you in a way. And that can be a helpful thing with guys like who are holding on to shame around things because they're convinced like, oh, you're gonna shame me the way that other person shamed me about the thing that I did, and it's gonna keep bouncing around my head and holding on to it for a long time. Versus when you find somebody who says like, okay, that was fucked up, but you're still human. We still love you. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes, and they finally get permission to let down the energy around that story again to get them to just go, oh my god, okay, I'm not a horrible. Like I fucked up, but I'm human. Oh my god, I feels good to have permission to know that I can screw up. I'm human. I'm safe. And then again, the energy finally gets dispersed when you have somebody else showing you, reflecting back to you the mirror neurons of like how you should be looking at the situation.
Michael, I think that was beautifully explained. It allowed for some connecting points for me too. One of the things that came up was some of the things I heard some great coaches say to me and great therapists is there is nothing you can share that we can't handle. And it made a connecting point of to say, when you show a different reaction, instead of that, everybody saying, oh my God, that happened. I was like, tell me more, say more. I'm here for you. And it's that calmed energy when yours might be way up or even, reversed. Like you were talking about the other story of where the person was very calm and nonchalant about their story when it's like, well, no, that's devastating what happened to you. It's in the sense, and I'm hoping you can talk more of breaking homeostasis and the importance of that and what that means for those listening. It's your normal behaviors. Mm-hmm. So like a homeostasis could be even something protective like that. Your mind is to go straight to this heightened state of, this happened. It's to protect you from the other thoughts coming in. That is the sadness behind it. That when you meet a calm energy, something that is trying to conflict it, it can break. It doesn't allow that penetration to happen. So your homeostasis, your normal behavior gets broken in a sense. And now it can allow a release of other things that are behind that normal state, or you could even call it a protector state, something that's trying to protect you from going beyond.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more into that and your thoughts.
I think we mentioned earlier about the amount of time you have in the day to process things. It was a good example as I heard. It was like, imagine you're a caveman way, way back in the day and you're out hunting with your buddies and you're all like, shooting bow and arrows back when bow and arrows got invented, or spears, whatever it was. And no caveman was a Deadeye. No caveman was Legolas from Lord of the Rings or something. Like a lot of them had to have screwed up and missed some shots. But like, imagine, okay, you're the caveman that took the shot and you missed, but then your buddy next to you, he took the shot, he hit it, and he killed it. Now everyone gets to eat because your friend was the one that made the shot and you didn't. Oh, it's embarrassing. Like, I have to go back to the village now and know that like he was the one that got it, not me. This is embarrassing. The girls are not going to look at me the same. But it's like but at the same time, if you had like 2 days walk to get back to the village, you have 2 days of completely uninterrupted time. A, uninterrupted time to really process it. And B, approval from the men around you that we still want you around, even though you fucked up or you missed, or whatever, because it happens. Because nobody has a perfect hit rate. As good as like we are, like, little boys still need to practice tossing and catching a ball. It's just repetition and practice. We're not born with a dead eye in us. And even the best of like the major leagues, even they still have like a batting rate or a hit rate. That's like, or any kind of sport. You just practice. So having that time to sit with the discomfort of what happened and really digest it properly while in the company of other people, that might have just been the natural process by which we would have. So you wouldn't have to create this story to make yourself sedate the feeling you're hiding from. Essentially, it's like, I've made this point before. It's like if you were like being chased by a murderer, like an axe murderer in the woods, and he gets a swing at you and you're bleeding out from your leg, you're not going to just like stop and then try to patch up the leg. You're constantly on the lookout to see where he is. But if somebody was there with you and said, I'll be your eyes while you take care of yourself, then you get yourself opportunity to just calm down and patch the thing up. If you don't have that around, you have to kind of create your own internal sense of protectiveness in the form of that homeostasis, whatever it may be. You're not. It's not safe to say it's not safe to grieve alone, but it's weird to have to grieve alone or like process things alone. We're not really meant to do that. And so I think over time, what ends up happening is that our minds can concoct narratives and stories that explains our reality as it is, rather than think about what should you really be doing to try to digest this properly, whatever it is. And that for the homeostasis of the storytelling, it's easier to say, it's easier for your ego to handle something like, oh, well, she was ugly, rather than it wasn't going to work out. Or like there was somebody better qualified for the job, instead we'll tell ourselves like, no, they were being, choosy, and nepotism and racism and sex, whatever it may be. It's easier to protect yourself from like an egocentric standpoint or emotional standpoint to create that story to protect your own ego, protect your own sense of, because pain, like growth is painful in a way. Yeah. In a nutshell, it kind of is a form of growing. You have to acknowledge, oh, here's a weak spot. Here's a blind spot I didn't see. And that was painful that I had to learn that way. And it just become, I think a lot of guys just become, not a lot of guys, it's just a part of our biology that we just have a natural ability to concoct narratives to explain our reality as it is, rather than sitting down and saying, is there something here I missed? Could I improve for next time? Is it okay for me to admit that I'm not a dead-eye marksman, like caveman hunter, and maybe my buddy's a little better than me? Maybe I could learn something from him, like learning to like let your ego drop a little bit in the presence of somebody who can teach you something new. It's a weird mix of competition and collaboration, and a lot of guys go too much into competition and not enough into collaboration.
I think that actually nicely goes into another point that's worthwhile discussing of, a good coach or therapist versus, other coaches, other therapists that are just out there. Not saying good or bad, it's just, what we've been taught, but what's especially effective for men in speaking more about breaking homeostasis and having that friend who's looking out for you while you're patching yourself up, or allowing you to not be in that panic state or in that protected state from self, or who can see that state and allow you to break through or pass that protector. So here's thinking more into that. And for the men that are listening, what to look out for when it comes to finding a good coach or good therapist out there to work with.
Somebody that, I think it's like when you go to the gym and you're working out for the first time and you see these big bulky dudes and you're like, I feel embarrassed, but I need to ask for a spot while I'm on the bench press. And this gigantic dude is like, yeah, I'll help you, bro. Fuck yeah. And you're like, oh, I was expecting you to be like monster, masculine, macho, tough. And you're like the nicest person ever. Finding somebody that you can like really connect with, that you can respect, that you can look up, maybe not say look up to, but you can like connect with, respect, and they know the difference between holding your feet to the fire and giving you space to breathe and grieve. Like with the program, the coaching program, learning from Dewey right now and Connor, that they made a point about talking about the difference between being stuck and trapped. And a good coach and therapist knows the difference, or can spot the difference with time pretty quickly. Stuck is like, I am just really nervous about going to ask this girl for her phone number. Well, what do? Go fucking ask her for her phone number. Like, there's nothing we can do. It's like, walk yourself through. What's the worst that's going to happen? Well, she might say no. Are you going to die? No, but it's going to really hurt. But will the pain dissipate with time? Yeah, okay. Then we got to just do it. Got to rip the Band-Aid off. Trapped is like, I have this irrational fear of something happening that I can't explain the origin from. And we dig in a little bit. We find out your dad was a tyrant, your mom was emotionally manipulative. And it's like, okay, you have like a bundle of energy, emotional energy still stuck in your head, keeping you like you're viscerally afraid of stepping out of your comfort zone versus just a little nervous. And there's a difference. And a good coach or therapist can say like, okay, I need to either like kick you in the ass and go tell you to go talk to that girl, or we need to figure out what happened to your connection to the feminine when you were younger that has become so vitriolic and you're in the back of your mind that you were terrified of talking to women. And that's like, okay, we need to slow down, open some things up a little bit, talk it through, versus like, okay, here's what you're going to do. Walk up to her, shoulders straight, shoulders back, head high, eye contact. Don't look at her chest, eye contact. Say like, what's up? My name is Mike. Firm handshake. I thought so from the cross. Whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Knowing the difference between the two. Because I think that's probably common that a lot of people will see somebody who is trapped and think they're stuck, or somebody who's stuck and think they're trapped. Like stuck and think you're trapped is a very, I would say, a maternal instinct. It's like you're like stuck when you think you're trapped is mom basically saying like, well, I don't want you to like step out of your comfort zone because it makes me uncomfortable. And it's like more of a maternal instinct to kind of say like, whatever I can do to make sure you're okay, because I can't bear to see my child be like upset or hurt, having a hard time. But in reality, like they need to learn to kind of like take the punches along the way. And then trapped and think they're stuck might be like the more aggressive paternal instinct, which is where you might see a father saying like, you got to just suck it up and do it. I don't understand what the problem is. Like the problem is like, you're not emotionally connecting to me. And I've been emotionally starved from you for like 20, 30 years, whatever it may be. And you're pushing me when I'm not ready to be pushed because there's something we haven't uncorked in the back yet. And I think knowing the difference between the two, in my opinion, is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that was beautifully stated of what to look for. I think some other qualities thinking about it too. It's also a therapist that's not just going to keep you in your head, your logic side. I mean, as men, especially, as we both know too, getting stuck in our head. We just want to logic ourselves to death. You know, why is this happening? Let's find a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Great. But it's not felt, at least not into the deep emotions that may be there that really are causing that trapped place to occur. And those are the emotions that a good therapist needs to get to. The places where that trapped component is inside your own body. Allow you to be felt and allow it to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because men can be very clever. And I know in my past, seeing a therapist long ago, I just used a lot of logic. I would just sit there and have a logical conversation. Oh, okay. Oh, so you're just saying I'm anxious with this. Okay, cool. And here's a couple of steps. Great. Awesome. Cool. Everything's there. So I have my steps, I have my work, I have my solution. We had a nice logical conversation. Nothing changed. I never really applied those steps. I tried a couple times, gave up. I was like, okay, we'll keep talking, having logical conversations. But it wasn't really until someone was able to say, well, let's see what's behind this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find out what's behind just the logic and not just solution, just to be heard and allow it to be seen. And, it was interesting at first. I was resistive. And until it was more of going to another initiation a little over a year ago, Connors, that I was able to really see what could be inside, emotionally stuck in our own bodies. And when we say that, it's just that just beyond the door of logic. What's the direct felt experience that we had as kids? And whether it was something, like a big traumatic event or even something that could have just caused us to have small interruptions in our comfort, and having that consistently happen could also cause that. Because even have the greatest parents, you'll still have something most likely that will still be there. And it doesn't mean, you might not have a healthier blueprint, but you probably most likely would have a healthier blueprint than some others. But there's always something a little bit there. And understanding what that may be is, I think, vital into our own growth and development. And I swear I'll finish this point. The reasons, if you are needing to see a therapist and a coach, means that there probably is something a little bit more that needs to be found there.
Yeah, if you feel like you don't have, not that I'm tooting my own horn here, but I know like recently I've been trying to get myself back into like stock trading and whatnot, mostly options. There's a whole program that I bought into, and it's a very effective program. It's like no matter what program you find or method or style you do, as long as you can find a one where you make more money than you lose, over the long haul you make money. That's essentially the nature of the game of something like trading. Is like you're going to make $100, but then you're going to lose $80, but you're up $20. And I've found myself routinely at times in the past like couple of weeks or so trying to get back into it, having a really hard time like sitting down and just focusing and doing it, because it's just like subconsciously I have a fear of making mistakes and being wrong. But if I just sit there and I talk to myself, I'm just like, okay, well, are you going to be wrong sometimes? Like, absolutely. Is it going to bankrupt you? No. Okay. Like, do you have a good ability to pick stocks? Historically, yes. Okay. So then recognizing that when I'm being reluctant and resistant, it's like it's that same fear coming up of like, all right, it's not an irrational fear, but it's an acknowledge, okay, I'm a little nervous. Why am I nervous? And you walk yourself through like the steps of what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. And you really get into the root cause of like, I'm just afraid of looking like an idiot. I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of looking dumb. Anybody that's ever done any kind of like serious trading knows like the fastest way to get your inner demons to come screaming out of your subconscious is to try to just do like stock trading or gambling or something like that. It's because it will pull out like every doubt and insecurity and fear you've ever had. And then from there, you can kind of like jot it down like, oh, this is my habit. This is my pattern. This is what I usually default to. So I had to just be aware of that moving forward. But if you don't have that kind of self-awareness, you can recognize like, oh, I'm in a loop again. I'm a little bit nervous about some nonsense. I'm actually very good. There's a method. Follow the method. Stick to the method, whatever it may be. If you're having trouble sticking to the method, why? Because you're just anxious. You're bored. You're looking for a dopamine hit. You're looking for a quick hit of satisfaction. You're afraid of making a mistake. When you can get to the point where you can talk to yourself and just recognize like, you're probably going to fuck up. You're probably going to lose money. You're going to make mistakes. And that's okay. There's an interesting, here's back to the neuroscience again. There's a Nobel Prize winning economist who did a study, it was like a psychological study, I think it was. Got the Nobel Prize in psychology. And it was talking about how we are wired as like with a negativity bias built into us. And they showed that on average, neurologically, a gain of like 10 cents on a $1 bet is equivalently like feel good as a loss of it was you have to like make 30 cents on a dollar to have the same emotional impact as losing 10 cents on that same dollar. So there's like for every good thing that happens, you need like 3 good things to happen for 1 bad thing to happen neurologically. And it just like it helps when you realize like, am I just bad at this? Like, no, I just had 3 losses in a row. You're not bad at this. Just like but it felt painful. Felt more painful than it actually was. Or, like you'll win 5 times, lose 6 and think you're an idiot. It's like, no, you won 5 times. This is where things like gratitude journaling and things like that comes really helpful because it's so easy. Your mind your mind is very good at remembering the bad things that happened, not as good at remembering the good things that happened. But it's more of a survival mechanism. Like it wasn't much of a benefit to us historically in caveman times to remember, like, remember that time you caught that animal? Yeah, that felt good. Remember that time you almost got eaten by that lion? Like, yeah, don't do that again. Never do that again, please. And you're never going to forget that lion encounter, but you'll probably very easily forget like the hundreds of times you nailed the deer and fed the village.
Right. I think that's a very good discussion. We probably could go on for hours on that part. In a legal disclaimer, this is not financial advice he's giving. purely just for fun, informational, but not advice here. Just the other night in my men's group, we were talking about the ability for self-forgiveness and a little bit of grace. And that was due to the fact of how hard we push ourselves, the negative thoughts that we focus on, because we want to learn a lesson. And that's the whole, part of that negative thoughts and why that biologically we remember that so much more than the 100 good deeds or things that happened to us. Or so like, when I remember people discussing about their vacations, but if something bad happened during it, that was a big focus point. I'm like, what happened? You went diving, all this. Tell me about that. What did you see? It's like, no, we had this taxi driver that did that. It's like, no. What happened in your vacation that was fun? And so it's interesting that you bring that up in a sense that we're so focused on the negative to learn, because biologically, that's how we're trained. I don't want to be eaten by a lion. So what do I need to do when I saw Michael here get bit by a lion because he wasn't being cautious and went into that cave unarmed? Maybe don't go to that cave.
Yep. Yeah.
Or at least go in with a group and, with our weapons, that kind of thing. And that's the interesting part is we get so focused. And in a modern society, we don't have to worry about a lion usually, but the same kind of thing comes up when we made a mistake or we did something that was bad, but we judge ourselves harshly on it in that component.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a component to this also of the internet having a really big problem with that is that people are not allowed to screw up anymore. People are just like mistakes are echoed into infinity.
Yeah.
And they're just written down and carved in stone and memorized forever. And it's like, if I was growing up with like TikTok and Instagram, holy crap. Like I'd be terrified to take a chance on anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's creating this kind of divide where you see, even when like in the mental health space, it's like the people that are not afraid to stand up and speak their mind openly online, even if under the attacks and the vitriol and the frustration and toxic this, toxic that, are the ones that are building it. They're like guys like Andrew Tate. It's a perfect example. It's like, well, he's a toxic misogynist. If you're like, but you're not asking the question like why so many guys like him in the first place. Even though he says some dumb crap and he's done some messed up things, he still has something of a commanding, I don't give a shit aura that a lot of guys are just like, I wish I could do that. I don't agree with what he says, but I wish I could do that. A sense of like not getting emotionally perturbed by something somebody said, whatever the way he does. And yeah, it's creating a bit of a divide of like people who are terrified of taking risk and people who are just like, they don't give a shit. We need more of like the middle ground of like healthy risk in between. But I think that's we have like people, your brain over indexes on negative experiences and has a hard time letting go of them because it's trying to keep you alive. But it's not, we're evolved for a world that no longer exists.
It's true. And putting yourself out there is very vulnerable. And I mean, this episode we're recording is the first one I'm recording for this podcast, whether it becomes the first episode or not, or what order it shows up. But this is the very first one being recorded. And, there's, of course, a lot of nuances and little things I picked up myself. I'm like, okay, I got to improve this, improve that. But I still am going to put it out there. I still have to take that risk to push forward.
Yeah.
And it means that it will be out there. And that's a scary part.
And the dirty little secret is like this feeling never really goes away.
Yeah.
It just pops up in new ways and new experiences of new things you've never done before. And this is where the gratitude, the idea of gratitude journaling or sharing the positive experiences, like you said, the vacation. It's like everyone could tell you what was the good things that happened. Like spend a little more time to sit with the good because your brain has a harder time integrating that. But yeah,
this recording's been a good time.
It's been fun. Yeah,
it's been a good time.
But the idea of like, well, when does it get better? When do I stop caring? And like, you probably won't. But you eventually, at some point, it's good to sit down and look back on like your inventory of things and recognize where you are and how much progress you've made compared to where you were before, and then just getting comfortable with like taking that perspective of recognizing like, why do I all remember the bad things? Like, oh, there's some good things. I had to just take a little more time to think about them, just because my brain's wired that way, and it's okay.
I love it. Love it.
Hell yeah.
So I think that's a good place that we'll end this.
You don't have another 2 hours
there.
Okay.
Yeah. We got to give some of the time. But what is one last thing you want to say to all the men out there that are doing the work or that are listening and going through this process?
My favorite personal quote that I kind of cooked up myself, and I'm sure somebody else said it. It's like, don't fight your own biology. Like when I wake up in the morning, most days I have no desire to get out of bed. I'm in a good mood now. Why? Because I got up, I went for a walk, I drank some water, I got some sunlight on my face. I need this. You need to get blood flowing. You need to hydrate. You need to get sunlight. I'm talking to somebody I care about talking to right now. I'm in a good mood. Like minus those things, I'm going to feel like crap. And it's not like, oh, it must mean I'm anxious or depressed. Like, no, it just means you didn't get your buckets filled of like your biological buckets filled on things you need. So it's like if you're a man having a hard time and it's just like, well, what do you need to do? You need a witness. Well, they'll make it like, no, that's no other way to do it. Just like, don't fight your biology. If your brain is basically saying, I'm not going to let you let go of this particular doom loop you've caught yourself on until you muster up the courage to go talk to somebody. Go talk to somebody. If you feel like crap because you're out of shape, go to the gym. You feel like crap because you're eating food, clean up your diet. Like your biology, your own body's not going to, you're not going to be able to convince your own body to be able to handle Taco Bell better just because you have willpower through it. Your body's like, if you feed me crap, you're going to feel like crap. If you don't have friends, you're going to feel like crap. If you don't drink water and get sunlight, you're going to feel like crap. Stop fighting me. You can't win this fight. Work with me, and I'll give you everything you want.
Don't fight your biology.
That's my own goal. And if you do all those things, if you're getting a healthy social group and you're in a healthy relationship and you're eating clean and you like get plenty of exercise and you still feel depressed, yeah, you might need some like serious help. And it's unfortunate if it happens. But for the most part, most of your problems are probably just something you're doing by fighting your own biology.
Love it, brother. Thank you for your time today. How can people reach you?
You can find me on YouTube or Spotify. I have the Adaptive Man podcast, or you can shoot me an email at theadaptivemail.com. I got to change that email address and get it to line up. But it's Adaptive Man podcast and adaptivemail@gmail.com.
You also have a website coming soon, right?
Someday.
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 It's a perpetual, this is my own fear of failure and mistakes. I'm like, I still got to do stuff and I got to get something up, and I got to get like, that's another rule. 80% is better than 100%. Perfection is impossible. Just go 80% good and go with that.
Well, thank you everyone for listening today. Please go ahead if you subscribe if you enjoyed what we said, and give us a shout. Reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Michael.